Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm a non-Jew like you. Hi, this is Matt McEwen. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Non-Jew Like You, where we explore the Jewish foundation of the Christian faith and see how first century Judaism has an effect on 21st century Gentile Christians. So today I would like to talk to you more about the book Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus that has recently come out by Lois Tverberg. Let me give her another advertisement. You can pick it up. It's published by Zondervan. It's a great book. It picks up where her last book left off, that she co-wrote with Anne Spangler, who wrote the afterword of this book. And that book is called Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus. This is called Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus, and picks up where that book left off. In another video, I told you about the word Shema and what that meant. Today, we're going to look at what Jesus said is the second commandment, or what he thought was tied to the Shema, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. Again, one of the reasons that I do this video series is because so much is lost in translation when we are reading out of an English Bible. As a pastor and as a Bible teacher, sometimes it's common for people to ask me what I think about a certain English translation. Well, as far as what is the best translation, I have a pretty direct statement to make about the matter, and that is to say that every translation is simply that. It's a translation. It would be better if we could read the Bible in its original languages. And don't get me started on that rabbit trail. I could go on and on about how we should put such a priority on the Scripture and what it really says. Why bother trying to get the most accurate English translation in our own tongue as if English is the greatest language? Why don't we just read it in the language of the people who wrote it down? So that's a whole other video that I'd love to get into sometime. But as far as things being lost in translation, that's one of the reasons I'm doing this video. And this statement, love your neighbor as yourself, the word that comes over in English as could mean as, or it could mean like. And we have similar things like this in English, like or as, when we're learning in our English classes in school about similes and metaphors, and a simile is something that is like or as. It's very common. We have this issue as well. So I want to bring to your attention something that Lois brings up in this book that I think is brilliant, and that is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. We as Gentile Christians have preached for years. I've even heard pastors preach this sermon. I have preached a sermon very similar to this, that if we're going to know how to love others, and we need to love them as ourselves, we interpret that to mean to love others as we love ourselves. In other words, to love other people in the same way that we love ourselves. And because of that hinge word there, as, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Now, what if there's a different meaning here? Just go with me on this. What Lois brings up is the verse could be translated into English, because this verse comes from the Torah. This isn't original with Jesus. This isn't something off the top of his head. Jesus is a Torah observant rabbi who had memorized the scriptures, and he's pulling this out of Deuteronomy. So when he says to love your neighbor as yourself, what if we said love your neighbor like yourself? And just go with me. What Lois brings up is it's possible to interpret that verse, love your neighbor for he is like you. Love your neighbor for he is like yourself. Now that puts a whole different spin on it, doesn't it? For us to realize that as human beings, as different as we think we might be from somebody else, we're really all made of the same stuff. Physically, emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually, we're all made of the same stuff. So it's important that I love my neighbor, not just to think of a way of loving my neighbor as myself, like, well, I love myself, I take care of myself, I feed myself, and so I need to do that to my neighbor. That's all well and good, and we'll get into that in a subsequent video. But I want you to think of loving your neighbor because he is like you. And that, my friends, puts a whole different spin on the parable of the Good Samaritan, because there was nothing in common as far as the Jews thought with the Samaritans, or as the Samaritans thought with the Jews, even though they had a common ancestry. The parable of the Good Samaritan all of a sudden opens up in a very interesting way. If to love your neighbor as yourself is, listen, I need to love this person even though we should be enemies, because at the end of the day, he's like me. Wow. There could be about 100 sermons preached on that. Not the least of which could be one where we should talk about racism, because we are like one another, even though we might look different. Don't even get me started. I could preach all day. So anyway, next time you hear this command, it's known to us Gentile Christians as the Great Commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the Shema that we talked about last time. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Jesus says there's a second commandment like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Who is in your world that is so different from you, but if you really thought about it, they're just like you? My name is Matt McEwen, and I'm a non-Jew like you.